be nice to one another because it is a very small world and people like to work with nice people.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Homework Help Show Student Influencers Podcast. Today we're here with Brent. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much for reaching out and thinking of me.
To start off, we do a couple kind of get to know you questions. So can we start off with where were you born and raised, and then where are you now?
Yeah, so through and through, I am a Durham Region guy. So I was born in Oshawa, grew up in Bowmanville, but I've had my own place here in Newcastle for about 5 to 6 years now.
And I have more get to know you questions, but you did tell me that you live in a mobile home. So I am a little curious about that as well. What's that like?
Yeah, so it's super cool. I won't lie. When we bought it about 5 or 6 years ago. And when I say we, I mean me and my dad, mostly my dad. So we were in a spot where we were able to buy it with mobile homes without getting into finances. You can't get a mortgage for it. So you ultimately are buying it outright. And we rent the land, but we own the actual trailer. And then we can probably talk about this a little bit more, but I, of course, am a blogger. So I've been able to sort of flip it, redo the kitchen, redo the bathroom with a lot of brand partners. And I always joke that, like, as you can probably see, it really is just like a studio. There's lots of lights everywhere. I have that window closed, but I've ultimately created a place where I can create content that's on brand without necessarily needing to go to a studio. So it's kind of works as two for me, but I love it. Bigger than an average size condo downtown. We have a yard for the dog and we have parking for two. So it's really great.
That's actually a good point, because I guess in Toronto, the average apartment you can get in Toronto is probably the same size. And now you have land.
Yeah, it's so we have the washer, we have the dryer, everything's here. We have like the full bathroom. There's like what is kind of like the bedroom area, which is where I'm in right now. Obviously my bed's behind me, and then I have sort of like a desk set up, a TV there. We've got another sort of kitchen area, a dining space, and then the bathroom, the sort of washer dryer area. And then we have a back room that we use as the living room with another TV. So yeah, we love it. Honestly, it is like so different. And I think there's a big stigma around it. When I tell people I live in a mobile home, they often think of like a camping trailer. And then once they see it, they're like, what? Like, this is like quote unquote bougie. And I'm like, yeah, I joke that the faucet's probably worth more than the actual like trailer itself. So yeah, it's honestly really great. And I'm happy to be able to have this spot because there's not a lot of inventory for these places either. So I don't go ungrateful for that, I guess.
Yeah, I really like that you're kind of like flipping that narrative on what people think of when they think of mobile homes, because a lot of people probably just think like trailer park or something, but
yeah,
like that sounds really nice.
And it is in a trailer park, and I'm surrounded by, I'll call them senior citizens. Most of them are a lot older, 60s. My neighbor's been here for over 20 years, and he always jokes his motorcycle is older than I am, but he's been here for a while. And I think the big thing when I started to make the inquiry is they thought that I was going to be like a partier or that I was going to be super loud. And I definitely am not doing that. Well, not here anyways. So I've been super respectful with that, and I get along with my neighbors great. So it is a trailer park, but it's definitely more older people, whether they're retired or still working.
That's amazing. I mean, not a lot of people could do that too, because I feel like a lot of people just want to be somewhere with so much space, like they're the size of their. So I mean, that's pretty awesome. And I was super, as soon as you said that, I was so curious. I was like, I need to ask him about this.
Yeah, I'm happy you brought it up. A lot of people in my community online, I think that's something that also helps me with pitches when I'm like pitching to brand partners is I don't have this like cookie cutter sort of suburban place. So it does create really a unique opportunity and a unique story. And I'm so young. I think I'm pretty young. I'm only 27. So to hit that demographic and to kind of like tell my story is definitely cool for a brand that wants to step outside of the box a bit.
Yeah, definitely. That definitely gives you a unique edge that's not a lot of people can say. So awesome.
Yeah.
So getting back to, I got off track there, but where did you go to college? I know you on your website, you talked about college a bit, but so where did you go to college and what did you study?
So I was at Durham College, which is sort of the local community college to Durham Region, and I took the music business management program. So with that program, it was really the only business oriented program that related to the entertainment and music industry. So it was super competitive to get into. I won't lie. I think a lot of that comes to like who you know, how you stand out. So I used to be a dancer, and one of the artists that I worked with, his manager knew the program coordinator. My aunt's a teacher, or was, she's retired now, but in the media art and design. And then I put myself out there. I emailed administrations and I was like, please, I want in this program. Like it was, I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I also, and this is something I'm excited to talk about too, as we go deeper in the conversation, was like when you're in high school, knowing like applied versus academic and whether you're going to go to university or college. I always thought I was going to go university until I found this program. And I took some applied classes in my final year and I graduated with a 93. So I was pretty confident that like I had a good chance, but it was such a competitive program, being the only like accredited, I guess, like Ontario college compared to if you were to go to a private school or a private college.
Right. I think that's definitely something that a lot of people kind of get caught up in high school, like the applied and academic stuff, because a lot of people like you don't. There are certain programs, especially if you're taking like a college program, something like that. There's a lot of people that kind of think like, oh, I need to take all academic, like because I need to do this and this and this. But then you kind of get stuck because sometimes, like I'm talking a little bit from experience here because when I was in school, I was terrible at math, like horrible at math, and I was an English person, and so my marks in math were really low, but my English marks were like 90s, and my math marks were like 60s, and I wanted so badly just to take applied math courses, but my parents would never let me because they were like, you need all academic to get into university, even though I took journalism, so I didn't need math. And it was just this big struggle. And I think that there's a lot of people that think like that, like, oh, you need to have this and this and this, and like they put all this emphasis on that, and I don't think people kind of understand that concept.
Yeah. And for me, I felt like there was almost and maybe this is too touchy, but there was like social circles, and I definitely was surrounded by people that went the university route. And like my partner, he's still in university right now, doing his master's. So like there's certain programs where like, yeah, you like if you want to do what he's doing, which is like a physiotherapist, you have to go to university. Whereas
Right.
for me, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit more, I always just wanted a fun job, and I've always been an internet kid. So you can pick up on a lot of those things young.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so kind of what I was gonna ask how you kind of what question about like what you're doing now, but where how when you were applying to that program, was that kind of something that you were wanting to do, like working in the music industry?
So I always wanted to be a talent manager, and I didn't. There was no such thing as like really. We didn't have this term around influencers, or so I really kind of pursued like music industry and working with artists because that is something that I'm interested in. My father's a musician as well, and I've just always thought like I don't want to do what he did, which was like the stable factory job that pays really well but doesn't give you that quality of life. So I knew I wanted to do something fun in entertainment, and I think in my yearbook I put like dream job was like to be an artist manager. And then as I kind of went through different experiences and like was exposed to like quote unquote influencers, I was like, hey, that's kind of cool. That's kind of what I've been doing since I was like super young. And now I have this experience from the music industry and working with art. I feel like I have sort of a whole perspective of like a brand versus a talent manager versus being a creator myself. And that allows me to kind of play like a very even middleman type role.
Yeah, so you're still kind of in that creative industry area, and but it's a little more well-rounded, so you can kind of you're not limiting yourself to just working with one specific thing.
I really have always constantly been like exposed to these different areas, but I really started to carve out a space in like, I guess like more entertainment marketing, and then really focusing and sort of like driving a career in social media. And I'll be honest, I didn't really know how much I knew until other people around me were like, you just rhyme it off like it's second nature. But for me, I've always been fully immersed. I've always been building this little brand on the side. So when I rhyme off like strategies and stuff for marketing, I always take a step back and like, okay, well, yeah, people don't know that. Just like you probably don't want me to build your wall in your house, or you don't want me to file your trademark because that's not my area of expertise. But I definitely found an opportunity, especially as like, and I do think the industry in influencer marketing is blowing up and just continue to grow. But 10 years ago, I was just working with YouTubers, wanting them to promote our products and seeing the kickback and seeing it work.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So speaking about that, can you kind of talk about a little bit about what you do now in terms of like your company and the kind of work that you do?
Yeah, so right now in November, I just left a full-time job, which was super steady. I was there for, again, 3 years as the director of projects and accounts for a creative agency. So I took a lot of that experience and a lot of that knowledge, and I've always sort of had my own agency on the side, but it was never, let's say, like legitimate. Like I didn't have a master business license until I decided to move on from that role. And back in November is when I really my thing, got the business banking, got the license, and really started to put myself out there and to put my face in my Boy Who Blogs brand, and associating that with creator services. Because a lot of people come to the Boy Who Blogs brand asking for marketing tips and all of that, but then I kind of need to filter that over to creator services. So right now, essentially what creator services does is act as sort of that one point of contact for small businesses, entrepreneurs, and creators that are looking to create synergy across their brand strategy, their marketing, and their digital PR. So I quickly learned about branding and the branding and then marketing. So I kind of just make it a little bit more approachable by saying social media marketing. And then that can evolve into, photography, video, websites, email marketing from there. But it was a little intimidating for clients to reach out and think that maybe the scope would be too large, but ultimately able to offer services that could be perfect for somebody that has a really small budget, just wants to get their feet wet, or ultimately managing budgets that are tapping into radio, print, TV, social, etc.
Right, and that makes sense. And you kind of focus on the influencer aspect too, because I mean, you know yourself that you are an influencer. So that kind of like, were you kind of did you kind of set yourself as an influencer first and then this kind of followed? Or was it kind of all just at once?
So yeah, I guess like it's weird to say like influencer, but honestly, I've
Hmm.
been doing that online sort of presence thing since I was so young, and it really started. I think it even started on like Habbo Hotel, if you knew what that was.
Yeah.
I was so addicted to this online community where you interact with people. I probably shouldn't have been. I was super young, but I would do my chores, and my mom would give me like money to go buy, which would ultimately turn into like digital currency on this platform. And then I went into more like MySpace, Pixo, Tumblr was really good for me. I remember doing like celebrity gossip type content on Tumblr and was averaging around 30,000 views a month, to the point where I actually got a letter from Courtney Cox's representing, or someone who represented her, telling me to remove something that might have been considered slander. So I was like, oh no, I needed to go back and kind of figure that out. So ultimately, I've just always sort of been online and people have found me. And I did run my brand very anonymously for years. And it wasn't until I couldn't even tell you when I actually put a face behind the brand, but that is when it really blew up. Guess at the end of the day, like it's always sort of been brewing there, but it was kind of like following the journey and me putting out those tips where people are like, okay, he knows what he's talking about. He seems different, whether that's good or bad. And then they're really being attracted to me as a person, but kind of getting tips of like marketing, seeing a little bit more about like my personal life. And ultimately, that's what builds community. And people want to work with me. They always are buying into like Brent, which sounds super weird. They're not necessarily buying into like creator services as an agency. They're usually coming to work with me.
Right. And that kind of like that does give you that extra selling point again too. But I was laughing because that Habbo Hotel really takes me back to, it's like really brings back some nostalgia for me because I remember that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people, like there's a lot of students out there that are kind of establishing themselves as student influencers, whether it's for career purposes or just to make some extra cash or anything like that. And I think that like that's putting yourself out there and actually putting like a face behind your brand is a really big step, because a lot of people, like, that's very intimidating to a lot of people. And I could see why it would be a little someone would be a little hesitant to do that right off the onset when no one really knows who you are.
Yeah, and I think the thing there, like you're not alone is the first thing I'd say to anybody that's hesitant there, because we're always sort of like, we're nervous. And I guess for me, a lot of it was I didn't want to like fail, I think was a big thing. I didn't want to be like, oh, I'm a content creator and then never monetize, not grow a following. But I think as you age, honestly, you kind of get more confident in yourself. You kind of like figure out your area of expertise in your lane, and then you start to build community and people reach out to you. So I totally agree with you there. The only thing that I would say is remember that what you're doing online is always going to be online. So even if you're gaming and you're in that community, like esports is such a big world, and obviously you can monetize a lot if you wanted to go that route. So just remember that wherever you're showing up online, like people remember, and ultimately the way you show up is going to be a reflection of your brand, even if you don't really realize that right now.
Right. Yeah. Do you have any kind of extra tips for anyone who's kind of trying to establish themselves either as an influencer or even just starting their own kind of side hustle, side business?
So I guess the big thing is like showing up, and showing up authentically, I think is a big thing. We really do look for like authenticity and genuine connections. And what better way to build that through audio and through video? So I really suggest like carving out a platform that makes sense for you. Like it doesn't necessarily make sense for me to do the whole TikTok thing, whereas some people have a lot of success there, and I can totally see the potential. But for me, I'm much more comfortable in written form, even if it's more laid back, not super professional on my blog. And then of course, Instagram stories is a really good way. And then I'll talk to you about something else, because I know it's a question that I think we're going to get to later, but there's a huge wave of audio, and I'm really excited to see how that evolves, especially this year.
Yeah, like the podcasting and stuff, you mean?
So even beyond podcasting, there's something called Clubhouse, and it's kind of like focusing on audio only. So it's kind of almost like, I don't want to say it's rivaling podcasts, because it's very different in the sense it's live, whereas people are going to be able to go and watch this if and when they choose to, for however long they want to until it's removed. Whereas Clubhouse is this new social platform that I've sort of got into, and I've really been loving that it's all in live time. You can't save it. You shouldn't record it unless you have permission, but it's gone. But it's interactive. Whereas if someone wanted to stop me and say, wait, what did you say about that question? No one can do that. They'll have to connect with me later. Whereas on Clubhouse, you can just sort of raise your hand or interject and say, wait, I want you to elaborate on that more.
Yeah, I've heard Clubhouse a few times, like in the last few weeks, but never really kind of looked into what it was. But I've heard people starting to mention it a little more often. So it definitely must be like on the rise. Is it kind of like so you said it's live audio based. Is it kind of like, what kind of format is that? Is it, I'm just curious.
Yeah, so it's a little different. So basically, right now it's invite only. It's pretty exclusive, but it's not as exclusive as it seems. So what I did was I started my own rooms where I talk about marketing, social media, influencer stuff, and it's just an open book. So I also set my rooms up in sort of a format where anyone can come ask a question and anyone can come and contribute to the discussion. So if you were like, hey, give me a marketing tip to improve my organic reach, then I can respond to that, and then maybe somebody else can add to that discussion as well. But you can do it in a closed room, or you can do it in an open room, and you don't know who's in the room. Like there's people as like the director of partnerships for massive brands. There's super small businesses. And it's super interesting, because I don't think we'd have that opportunity if it wasn't for COVID and sort of the situation that we're in, because a lot of people might have been at work and not able to sort of do that multitask, or they didn't have the time in their day to do it. So mark my words, it's going to be very, very valuable. And I'm super excited that I've already sort of created that community there that shows up every day for me to host a room and kind of chat with them.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. And like, obviously right now, obviously if it's invite only, not everyone's using it, but it really sounds like there's kind of a unique offering there that's a little different from a lot of the other social media platforms that have gotten really popular. Like I know that they've released new ones, but they kind of all have a similar feel. So, like even Twitter and Instagram are kind of similar because it's just like posting things in a news feed kind of thing. So it definitely sounds like something that will get more popular because it does have that unique advantage, is what it sounds
Yeah,
like.
and I'm always excited to see how things roll out because I would say like primarily Instagram's my one of my favorite platforms. But as you probably pick up on, always the competition. So we look at stories, which kind of came from Snapchat, the saves and the collections, which kind of comes from the inspiration of Pinterest, being able to create those boards. And then the other thing, of course, Reels is huge that they've rolled out in Canada, which is kind of offering the same level of experience that TikTok has. And then with the rise of Clubhouse, there's sort of discussions around what they're going to call rooms. So having rooms on Instagram that give you that audio experience and is a little different than something like IGTV or going live too. So yeah, I like to just kind of like go on the platforms early, check it out.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds like something to keep an eye out. So you kind of said before that you started off with all of this by starting a blog in high school, and then you kind of kept working on that while you were in college.
Yeah, so it went through like different little like phases, I guess. So at the first time, it was really just like brentcolmer.tumblr.com, and that's where I kind of was like riding that wave. That was fun. Then I put that to rest, and then I kind of had a lot going on like anonymously on the side. And then once we kind of like grew up, my roommates went to other places in sort of Ontario. We obviously weren't living together, so and I honestly don't think they loved doing it. I think they were like, oh yeah, it's cool, we'll do it with you, but that wasn't what they wanted to do. They just kind of saw it. And one of my roommates at the time, we worked together in e-commerce and in subscription boxes, and we were working with quote unquote influencers. So I know she saw the potential of like the way you can monetize and all of that stuff. But needless to say, I've just kind of been poking at it on the side, and then eventually decided, you know what, I need to practice what I preach. I sort of put myself out there is when kind of the universe was like, all right, this is where we're going to start giving you brand partnerships and giving you more opportunities.
Yeah, that makes sense. Was it kind of hard to balance the work that you put into that while you were in college? Like when you had, like, did you have any other um, responsibilities that you had to balance with all that while you were studying?
So I think the good side of it is that like I was never in the position where I necessarily needed to like do something for anybody else. And I guess that's the great thing of like being your own boss is that like if I didn't post that week, that's okay. But in college, I was definitely busy being involved in volunteering because I really wanted hands-on experience in the music industry. So this was always just kind of something on the side. And honestly, even today, like it is a larger part, especially now that I've left my job and have focused on the agency. But really where the bread and butter is like having the agency. And this is still just something that is, I guess, more of a creative outlet that has a lot of potential, but I wouldn't consider myself a full-time creator. It's just a way to kind of have fun and like honestly connect, specifically during like any interaction of just to kind of chat back and forth. So
Yeah, that makes sense. Where did you volunteer when you were in college?
So a lot of what I was doing was on campus. So they had, at the time, it was called the Student Association. So it was basically a branch within it that wasn't owned by the college, but they put on all of the concerts and the festivals that were there. So I really just put myself out there and was doing volunteer work, whether it was like media relations, so kind of the middleman between like the media outlets that would come, handing out accreditation. And then I think my favorite part was like positioning things to look pretty and like making sure that the riders were filled, or if they couldn't be filled, that there was some sort of thing to swap it out. And then other things that kind of come along with it, like helping with load in and load out. I didn't have to do too much of that because I don't have the muscles, but definitely more of like the hospitality, and really great just to kind of see what goes on behind the scenes of a concert because I've always loved live music.
Yeah, me too. I go to a lot of concerts, so I've always actually kind of been curious about what it is like behind the scenes. But I've never actually gotten to see it, but
And I think a big part, so I started when I think I was 16. And if you're familiar, there was big music festivals that took a week. essentially this company came in and did Canada's biggest music festival, and it was right in my backyard. And I was going to school for music at the time. So again, put myself out there, wanted to see how I could get involved, started to volunteer with them. And ultimately I did my internship, which was part of my 3 years of the program at Durham College, and then received a job offer and continued to work with them up until I decided to kind of move on. But by the end of it, I was really working very closely with the founder of the festivals and kind of helping with everything from admin stuff to a little bit of PR, integrating influencers, coordinating some of our special guests, whether they were celebrities or athletes, but it all started during.
Right. And that's kind of volunteer, because we do talk about like the value of volunteering as a student a lot, but that is kind of like if you can find volunteer experience like in a field that you want to be working in, I think that is extra valuable because you get that double benefit of the volunteer experience and that relevant experience that you can use to build specific skills and put that on your resume. So I think that's I mean, obviously it really helped you a lot, but I think that that's something that a lot of students I think should consider looking for.
Yeah, and ultimately we're really just creating our own network, because I remember when I was in high school, part of the sort of I guess qualifications or what you needed to graduate was volunteer hours. So I had a hard time like kind of getting volunteer hours, but luckily my mom works at Canada Post, so I was able to help with the Santa letters, which was super fun.
That must have been so fun. Like I feel like that's like reading all these
I love it. Yeah, I still love it.
yeah, I would totally do that just to see like what kind of thing like kids come up with the funniest things. So I can't even imagine like the kind of things that you came across in those letters.
They're fun.
Yeah, definitely. So with all of that stuff that you were doing, did you kind of have a system that you used to kind of keep yourself on track when you were balancing all of that stuff, like volunteering or doing your blog or school or anything else like that?
So I guess I kind of, now that I think of it, I didn't like in the moment, I didn't really realize that I was doing anything time management, but I was really just like prioritizing what needed to be done. Like obviously I had to show up to get to do the responsible thing and, make that sort of earning there. So I always sort of had my priorities in place and did a lot of time blocking and a lot of like work back schedules, which is honestly something I still do to this day, is like I'll meet with a client and I'll figure out sort of like the timeline or the duration of the project and kind of create a work back schedule that has like milestones throughout. So did something similar to that. But I think as a high school student, I honestly didn't know. I wasn't aware that well, but I was very, very big on the pen and paper and color coding things. And I know in high school, I was the type that used so yeah, I actually didn't do things that digital when I was in high school and into college. I was definitely more like color coded, written down, and that definitely helped me.
Yeah, sometimes I find that writing things down and using like the pen and paper method is more effective because you're not just relying on putting something in your calendar on your phone and then waiting for a notification to remind you of something. Like when you can put everything down on paper and you can actually see it, I feel like for me anyway, that makes a huge difference and it's easier to stay on track when I can just see it.
Comes down to, for me at least, like the way that you learn and the way that you remember things. I always like, even like in like whatever grade or whatever sort of level of education, writing it out was super helpful for me. And I find that now, even like professionally, I did like a demo with a software company. He was just showing me things all over. And I'm like, I need to like immerse myself in there. So it's different because like my partner's the complete opposite. He'll listen to like a 3-hour lecture and retain everything. And I'm like, no, I need to be like immersed in that discussion. So I think kind of like identifying what's best for you, and that's not always easy, but it worked.
Yeah, and it really comes down to your own learning style too. Cause like I know some people can listen to like a podcast or something and then like remember, like you said, retain everything. But that like for me, that doesn't work because I have ADD. So I can't just like sit there and listen to something. I need to see it. I need to touch it. I need to like interact with it and then maybe like write it down and like do like 5 different things to drill that whatever I'm listening to in my head. But some people, and I always admire people who can do that, but some people can just like see something once and then remember it, and it's actually mind-blowing that some people can do that.
And I think it's so funny because I still have this struggle today. And we were just chatting about it like the other week, is that like I've never been good at like watching a movie and then like telling you certain things in school. I always felt like, so like that's so easy. Like you're watching a movie and they're asking you like what's the name of the second character, but for whatever reason that was just not my strong suit. And to this day it still is not. Like if you're like ask me what happened in a movie I watched, like I don't know what you're good at and run with it is the best thing I can say there.
Yeah. I mean, I do the same thing. Like sometimes I'll watch a movie and sometimes I have to actually like rewind certain parts of the movie because I catch myself like just not paying attention anymore. And I'm like, wait, what just happened? Why is this? And then someone will ask me, oh, how was that movie? And I'm like, I can't remember one thing about it. So I can't really tell you.
Yeah, guilty.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so yeah, that's a really good time management system that I mean I actually hear that more often than you'd think, like from people I talk to about writing things down and stuff. So like I feel like it's just like a classic method that really just makes it work and goes with your own learning style. Um, so yeah, I think that's a really good idea anyway.
Yeah, and a lot of it is just managing expectations, I find, whether it's self expectations or client expectations or other relationships that you have, and really prioritizing the things that make sense to prioritize.
Right. And saying, okay, and being realistic, I think is another thing too. Like, I have 5 different tasks to do. Realistically, how long are these going to take me? And instead of going, okay, I'm going to do all of these right now and I'm going to get them all done, and putting those kind of unrealistic expectations on something, I think is really, really can damage that entire system because you're not being honest with yourself that something's going to take longer than you planned and maybe you won't get all of those things done in that one day or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I always let buffers in. Like if anyone needs a secret, I always let like little buffers in, especially when I'm working with other people. Because for me, I've always had the challenge of like holding high expectations and having a hard time delegating. And I know, and especially as I like get really sort of like more projects and more clients and bigger teams, is that like someone might tell me that it's going to take them 5 days. And then I tell the client it's going to take 5 days, but it buffer in a couple times because you can always over deliver, right? If I send it to you early, you're probably not going to be upset about it. So I always just try to add a little bit of buffer just to kind of, I guess, maintain my personal brand too. Because when you do rely on other people, there's a little bit room of error, I'll say, or conflict. So I just try to like really oversee things and have like a general idea of where projects are at, and follow up is a good tip too.
Yeah, I think putting a buffer zone is important too. And I mean, because there's always going to be something that might come up or something that, especially like you said, if you're relying on other people or like a team of people, you need to have a little bit of that wiggle room just to kind of be proactive and kind of like cover yourself in case there is a problem. So do you have any kind of other pieces of advice or anything for any students that might be taking like digital marketing programs or um, even like entrepreneurship programs or anything like that?
Yeah, I think the big thing there is like definitely I value education and I see so much that comes of it, but you can learn so much by just like doing it, putting yourself out there. There's so many things that you just can't learn in school, I'll be honest. And then so many great things that I have. If you are an entrepreneur, what you do and then somebody else's experience. So I just say there's no better time than just to do it. And if you can find a mentor, that is like amazing, just to find someone that can kind of just like keep you in line, keep you in check, tell you what maybe you should avoid because they tried that and it didn't work out for them. So I would say if you can find someone that is like open to like, even if you don't even interact with them, but you just like soak up information from them, that is amazing. But I say just do it because you're probably going to have areas where you're less than happy of it or it didn't go the way you wanted. But at the end of the day, like it's the people that push forward and the people that like make that leap, I guess, that succeed. Like there's no room back down, to be completely honest. So like do whatever you want. Literally, I know that sounds cliche, but it's true.
No, I get it. And I mean that mentor, like fine, the mentorship aspect, I think that's that's something I hear a lot in almost every single industry or field or program, because I think it's just important for anything you're studying to just have that mentorship, because there's always going to be, like you said, real world experience is just as valuable, if not more, than what you learn in school, and a mentor can kind of give you that connection between the two to kind of bridge them. And then you do have that real world person you can either shadow, or who can just give you their lived experience and share that with you. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, and like specifically to like social media and digital marketing, like there's so many resources that are made available through the platforms themselves. So if I were to talk about like Facebook or even Google, like if you want to become like a Google Ads specialist, do it because you can make good money. But you can self-teach yourself all through Google sort of like certifications in their education portal. And same with Facebook, they have their own certification. So I would say the value that you learn from that experience is so you can just learn by trial and error, and things are going to be different depending on the project, depending on the offering. Like there's a lot of variables. So I say just get your feet wet, get your hands dirty, and don't like hold yourself back, because I think at the end of the day that's what's holding a lot of people back is like self-doubt, imposter syndrome, whatever. But it always is rooted on us. It's not like, well, I'm sure there are some people that might have outside factors, but personally it was a lot of like my own stuff and my own head games that I just needed to like realize.
Yeah, that imposter syndrome can really be a huge setback if you don't kind of like, if you let it really get into your head, it can really put a lot of limits on what you think about your own like capacities too. And like that's a word I hear a lot too.
Yeah, and you mentioned like challenges, and I think one thing for me, which you can maybe even like pick up on still, is I am really short and I have always looked young and I can't grow facial hair. And there's kids in grade 11 that look a lot older than me. So like that has been a real challenge, is just like getting people to respect me and like give me a seat at the table. And then as soon as I open my mouth and sort of like share my knowledge, they're like, okay, sort of like trust. And unfortunately, I think that's just humans, is like I do look young. So it would be hard to be like, here's a huge budget, go spend my money. Whereas if I maybe also the way I present myself, I'm never going to wear a blazer, right? And I think that's
Right.
something that my generation and younger generations are okay with. Whereas traditionally, you would expect someone that's like a marketing professional to show up in a blazer or however else. And that's just not who I am. And that allows me to attract like an ideal client that I like to work with.
Yeah, I was laughing because when you're saying how uh, you were short, so everyone thinks you're younger. I have the exact same problem because I am just under 5 feet tall. Like I am very short, and I'm almost 30. But people think that I'm like 21 half the time, and like it's really hard to sometimes be taken seriously, especially sometimes like if I'm trying to like actually say a point and it's something, or if I'm like angry about something and I'm trying to like get a point across, people are just like, oh, that's okay. Or they like do like the little head pat thing, and I'm like, so I know exactly
Yeah.
I know exactly what that struggle's like.
But I think like I almost balance that a little bit up, even from like hoping one's listening, is like straightforward. And like I'm very respectable, but I think this has helped me with my career a lot, is that there's certain people, or you might think, oh, they're the owner or they're the whatever their title is, and then you treat them differently. And I've never done that. And I think a lot of that comes from working with celebrities and talent, is like they're literally just people. And just like myself, someone might be like, oh, you're an influencer. Like I'm really like, sure, you can say I have some sort of influence, some sort of voice, but like I'm literally just a person. And I've quickly learned that as I slowly age, is there's corrupt people that are traditionally we wouldn't, and a lot of people value that, a lot of people respect that. And I definitely do, I would give a lot of praise, and I would give a lot of like, I guess, acknowledgement to that personality trait, and how that helped me specifically in the music industry too, was like not being afraid of people that other people might have treated differently based off of their status. And those people were drawn to me because they loved how real I was, but still respectable. No one likes working with someone who's not. So that would be my little cliff note there. But definitely, like if someone says like, oh, how's my hair look, and like they have a flyaway, like let them know, because they genuinely want to hear that, and you're going to gain their respect.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to remember, like with networking in general too, because like just talking to people and not based on their position somewhere. And because another thing too, because nowadays, kind of like how we're talking about, like people in our bracket don't really do the whole suit and blazer thing to work anymore. And along those same lines, someone might look like they run the company, they might not be the person that runs the company, and the person that actually runs the company might not even, like, you might not give off that vibe. So I mean, it kind of goes along with those things of you never really know who you're talking to and what that person's kind of position is. So just if you treat everybody equally, it gives you that better shot of, okay, well, now I'm treating everyone with respect, and it doesn't matter who you are now, or it doesn't matter if that person's actually secretly the CEO or whatever.
Yeah, and I think my experience is so real with that because like for the longest time I was an assistant. So there were certain people who would just like think that like, oh, he's just the assistant, but they didn't realize how much pull I actually did have and how respected my boss treated me. So if I told her something or her and I did do a, like the actual work too, like I won't sugarcoat that one. I did a lot of the work. So it's, yeah, titles are one of those things that I quickly grew to realize that like you can do whatever you want. I could call myself the CEO, whereas like the CEO of what? Like you could throw a title up and be it and put that in your Instagram bio, and it's really just kind of showing up where you are. But I loved what you said about not necessarily knowing who's around you, because that's a big part too, especially who's around you right now and how are you treating them? Because in 10 years, they could be the HR manager, or they could become, I don't know, for me, like friends of mine from high school are now police officers. So what if they pull me over and I'm speeding? Do I get away or no? So it's so real, and it's just something that I don't know if people necessarily think of when they're going through whatever it is with school, or sort of like finding yourself is a big part of like, I don't know, that age group. I'd say high school, early college.
Yeah, I think that's a thing. Like, it's kind of one of those, you know, how they kind of have those TV tropes where they kind of joke when they have all the stereotypes, like the nerds and the jocks, and one, you better be nice to the nerds because one day the nerds are going to be your boss. And like, I know that's very stereotypical, not really, but it's kind of that same concept of like, well, you never know what person might end up being your boss one day, or what person, you know, if you make the wrong person mad and then they, you know, they become a cop and pull you over, well, guess who's not getting away with getting out of that speeding ticket anymore?
Yeah, and then how we talked like earlier in the conversation about like, let's say like the streams, like applied versus academic, there's people that in school might not have been the best at school, but now they have an amazing job and they probably make way more money than I do, but in school they didn't show up or whatever. So not to go down that rabbit hole, but you really have no idea where people are going to be in 2 years, 10 years, 15 years.
And I think that's kind
Two
of
weeks.
a, yeah, and I think that's kind of a mindset that changes once you leave high school, because in high school it's
Yeah.
very, that mindset is very much like, okay, well, you're stupid, or you're not very smart, or you're, I don't know. And then all of a sudden everyone, like, high school isn't really a reflection of like who anyone truly is, but people in high school don't really give each other that chance. So that's why, like, that going to university or college or any post-secondary for that matter, kind of, that's where you really shape yourself as a person. But I feel like there is definitely a transition with mindset thinking that has to happen when you leave, you know, high school for a lot of those reasons.
Yeah, and on the flip side, I think there's also the complete opposite of like, there was one girl who I went to school with who was so smart, like I kid you not, just like so book smart. And then after school, she actually didn't end up going to university or college. And I, to this day, I'm still like, what did she do with her life? Like, I still think of her. So, yeah, she was so smart, so smart, but for whatever reason, didn't pursue any secondary. And I'm like, what did you do? Or like our valedictorian in high school, what are you doing right now? Because I lost valedictorian to you.
It's like, which one of us really deserved that?
No, I was a well-rounded person where I may have had some, like, I was very good with like the books, but I definitely played both like the good student and was super chatty and probably annoying, and the one where they would move your desk up to the teachers. But I think the teachers kind of liked me because I kept things fun for them, but I was probably disruptive.
Yeah, but I think like it kind of what was I was gonna say something kind of based on the whole there's a difference between having book smarts and having, like, I call it street smarts, but it's more like just like a practical, not common sense, but along those same lines. Like there's different
I know what you
types
mean.
of smart, and just because someone does really good and gets A pluses on all of their tests doesn't mean that they're like skilled in a lot of other areas. So, and I think people overlook that kind of value as well too.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a mix, and I've seen it with even like some of my really good friends who are amazing, and then maybe not so amazing, and like I'll say everyday decisions. Maybe is that fair?
Yeah, that's probably the right. I always just say street smarts, but then it kind of sounds like I'm thinking everyone's just like living in like the rough corners of the street, so like, it's not really accurate, but more so just like survival skills, maybe.
Yeah, no, I
Something like
completely
that.
agree.
Definitely. So we usually kind of ask, I know we kind of already jumped to that a little bit, where I was going to ask what kind of struggles and challenges you faced, but I think we did kind of already talk about that. So on the flip side, what is one of your favorite memories from college or from
I
starting
have a
your business?
lot. College, I'd say that I have a lot, and I think where I really saw the potential of like brand partnerships was it was a volunteer role, and it was for credit in college, and my title was director of sponsorships for this music festival that they still to this day put on. So I was basically just the student that was willing to do a little bit more of the leadership role, and I actually secured a brand partnership with TD, and I think it was TD Waterhouse, and like then implemented wanted to get out of it and what they were going to get out of it, but really had a great experience like seeing like, okay, this logo needs to be positioned like this, you can't match this with this, like really just like corporate brand standards. That was really interesting. And then in college I also booked my first band, so that was fun, like negotiating the contracts, the pay, even like their rider, like they wanted X amount of whiskey and it's like, no, we can't give you that. So like I think those are my two favorite things in college, with securing a TD sponsorship and then booking my first band.
Yeah, that sounds super exciting. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. And I think that's kind of like I think that's really interesting because a lot of the times, like when we ask people what their favorite memories are from college, a lot of it's kind of like, oh, I went to, like, my friends and I did this really fun thing, and or there was a party or something along those lines, or it was like a sports team or something. But I think it really shows a lot when people answer that question and it's their favorite memories were a lot of stuff that ties into their careers or what they're doing now or anything like that. Like I really think that it just shows a lot about people who are passionate about what they do, is when that, like, when
And
you can
your
pull that out.
experience. I
Mm-hmm.
think I'm super transparent that I didn't have that like I'll say like Hollywood experience in college. Like I went to the college that was like 20 minutes from my house. I lived at home for the majority of it. I didn't get to do the whole dorm experience, like all of that. I honestly feel like I had my college experience in my high school, and then in college, I was really just like, I want to work. And I feel like I've always been kind of almost like ahead of that curve and almost like pushing myself to be like, wait, like, why don't you just sit back and like enjoy high school, like enjoy college? So if anyone's listening, stop aging yourself because eventually you're going to be like, oh, I'm turning 30 and you didn't have those experiences. Whereas like my friends, they went away to university or went away to college and they did the dorm thing and they did like all of that fun stuff. While I got to do that, I would definitely say in college, my mindset was like, how do I get experience? This is a tough industry to crack and I want to get a job as soon as I graduate. And hey, it worked out, but I definitely compromised on like the partying and like the super social stuff. I still got to do that, but at the end of the day, it was like sleeping over at my friends from college's house. Like I didn't live in like a rental property with like 5 other students and like have that experience, which I kind of regret. I think that would be super fun, but at the end of the day, like it is what it is, and you got to move beyond that, right? So
Yeah. I think that's a good point because a lot of people, I mean, there is something to be said about that experience of living in a huge student house with a bunch of people and going and living in the dorms and having like all of this like movie type of experience. And some people don't do that and some people do. And a lot of people who do it will tell you, oh, you missed out on this amazing thing and all of that kind of stuff, or like you missed out on this experience. But I think that experience is not really for everyone, because like I know I had that experience, but I know a lot of people who actually hated that kind of experience. And I think it really depends on a lot of factors too. Like I had my fair share of roommate drama, and I would never live in a house with all those people again.
and I
So,
think the other thing too is like the financial side, right? Like that's
mhm.
a huge part. And like we are lucky in Canada that like there's OSAP and there's grants and we have those sort of things. But like quite frankly, I probably couldn't have afforded to go and like done the whole dorm thing, especially with like a meal plan. Like my friends that had like $1,000 on their meal card a month, like totally different than sort of like my upbringing. But I think like there's another thing to think of is I had a friend who did like probably 2 college programs and then took the program that we were in together and had so much debt because they lived off campus for all of their college experiences. Where again, if you're coming out of school and you don't want to have that huge debt, like is that something that you can compromise on? For me, it was ideally like not with like the shared room stuff. But yeah, I don't think I would have probably been able to like financially like do that, to be completely honest. And that's okay because the program was only, it just happened to be the one that was local to me is what I wanted, so I left out.
That's a big factor as well. Definitely. Like not everybody can afford to go away and have that experience. And like, yeah, oh, we do have OSAP and stuff like that, but like that covers a chunk of the expenses that you're going to face as a student, but there are still going to be so many other things involved. And like I even know like I live in a university town as well, and I know a lot of people that I graduated high school with, and their parents basically gave them uh the option of either we'll help you if you want to go away to school, but if you stay here and go to school here, we'll buy you a car. And I know a lot of people who had
Yeah.
that happen because like it's one or the other and it's expensive. And I feel like a lot of times people like those people who say like, oh, you're missing out if you don't have that university experience. Like I think that's kind of can be a little negative mindset because not everyone has that opportunity, and you can't really judge somebody just because they aren't fortunate enough to be able to be in a financial position to go away to university.
Yeah, and I think that is like there's so much to unpack on that one for sure. But at the end of the day, I'm just happy that it like worked out for me, and ever since I was in grade 11. But it's because it was like if I lived downtown Toronto, I wouldn't necessarily need a car. But like out here in Durham, like I don't even know if the public transit is still like doing as much volume as it once was, right? So you kind of needed the car, especially for me to get to campus. And then I actually lucked out because my family, they owned a lot of property that was around Durham College like years and years ago. So my grandma actually had a house that she was living at, and I could just park on her driveway, and we had the free bus pass. So I could go on, and then within like 5 stops, I was at the campus. So I was saving on parking, and I got to see my grandma more. So it really worked out just having to have a property that was so close that I was able to park at for free and then hop on the free bus that they gave us.
Yeah, that's pretty resourceful.
Yeah.
And convenient because you get to see your grandma and save on parking is very expensive. I've come to realize like I didn't I had a car when I was in university, but it was because I was playing sports and I didn't need it to get to class. But I remember like a lot of people, and I remember I never even realized how much parking was until like I had friends who were off campus and driving to campus, and like they would tell me how much money they were spending on parking, and I was like, are you serious?
Yeah. It's something to factor into your experience is like, how are you getting to school? Where are you staying? Like, those are definitely huge factors. And going back even to high school, I was really wanting to do a placement at Rogers TV Durham, and they offered me it, and I had my interview all lined up, but I could not get to Rogers TV Durham to do my placement. So I couldn't even take that opportunity, which who knows where would have my career went if I would have done that high school co-op, I think was the term, but I just couldn't take it because of where they were located. There was no public transit. My family worked. I couldn't get a ride there. So again, just like that access, I didn't have access to get that placement. And then there was other people that did it, and they obviously had great experiences. But for me, I'm like, oh, practicing food or the food nutrition class was like the older student that helped the grade 9s and 10s, and now I'm a great cook, so thanks.
I mean, that's a valuable skill I've learned because I have no cooking skills, so it is something like those skills are important. But
Sure.
yeah, I think there is something to be said about that. Like, I mean, it could be a whole separate conversation about how those institutions are kind of structured where like financial limitations are a big deal. So I'm not going to get into that, but yeah, like that's a valid point to think about as well, especially if you're a student and you're thinking about, even if you're just thinking about bringing a car to school in the first place, there's a lot of pros and cons.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So right now, what are your kind of long and short-term goals? Like, I know obviously like right now it's a little kind of hard to plan that kind of stuff out because our situation with the pandemic kind of changes every single day. But what are your kind of things you're working on right now?
Yeah, so much. Honestly, I soon like it didn't really like start to pick up until recently my agency because I was a lot more like just like I guess vocal on social media telling people what I'm up to. So now I'm seeing like a lot of people reaching out and they're kind of cluing in that I've left my old job and finding me there. So I'm actually starting to build out my team a little bit further because I have more work than really resources to do it, which is obviously a great problem. Like, oh, so sorry that you're in that situation. So for me, I'm trying to think of, like you said, like short term and long term. And long term, I don't necessarily want to be necessarily like there every single day doing everything. So right now, to build up the agency and build up the brand clients, I've got to do that. But I'm always thinking about in the future, where do I see myself in 5 to 10 years? And my partner and I, we've always talked about like launching another business together that would be more specific to his industry and how I can support him while still having this. And then seeing more and more interest as I slowly start to build the Boy Who Blogs community. Like if this has been going on for years, but I'm tracked other things, really cool brand partnerships. So I have to say that I have like a huge plan, but ultimately I want to build this agency up, get more passive income, and kind of just see where things go. I don't want to like set perimeters because I think sometimes when you set those perimeters, but I'm definitely a goal setter. I have goals somewhere around here, and one of them, you're going to laugh at this one. I really wanted a fried chicken brand deal through Boy Who Blogs. So I spoke out loud. I told people I wanted this. I implemented some strategy to get on their radar. And guess what? A fried chicken company reached out to me last week, and we're looking at partnership opportunities for the spring. So anything's possible. I really do like short-term goals. Q1, I want to do this. Do I want to do this? But long term, I'm just like most of us. I don't really know where this is headed. I'm just here for the ride.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best part, is not necessarily setting too much in place. And that's just kind of my vibe, which is like laid back, a little hippie.
Yeah. Is there any like particular reason why you wanted fried chicken and specifically?
Oh, it's just on brand. Like I love fried chicken. It's just it's so fits. Like people that know me, they know that I genuinely really do love fried chicken, and it was just something that I think would be fun and quirky. And how do I evolve my brand and how do I have fun with it is kind of like by doing different partnerships that like you may or may not expect, but anyone that knows me in real life is like, that is so up your alley, and they're usually going to be the ones that rally behind me when I do that sponsored post, because it's so much more genuine than if I were to promote, say, I don't know, something that like I'm not really into, which would be maybe like fish.
I'm not into fish either. But I mean, everybody who's a business person or a marketing person always wants to have clients of things they're really interested in or they really like. I mean, that's kind of the dream. So, I mean, I don't really blame you on that one. Makes you actually want to like work twice as hard to get them a lot of wins too.
Yeah, and it's like a brand that I genuinely do like their stuff, which of course that's who I'm aligning myself with. But I think the weird thing there is it was so specific, right? Like who's manifesting that they want a fried chicken brand deal? That's a little out there, but that's honestly the best thing I can say is like don't necessarily set these massive things. Like some people will put like, yeah, I have like numbers that I want to hit, but at the end of the day, like what are you doing to like continually push forward is what I look at. So I don't know if that's the best answer, but I am a big believer in like setting those goals and like checking in on them. But I think we just need to like let our shoulders down, release our jaws, and like not have so much pressure on ourselves as like I think that society almost like wants us to have. So I don't know, probably an unpopular answer on that one.
No, I think that makes sense because like it's important to keep setting goals and always have something to work towards that keeps you kind of motivated. But at the same time, like if you don't hit that goal when you want it, when you plan to, like it's okay. And like there's a lot of people who are like I know even with my own friends, like I have some people who had this kind of like 5-year plan and then it didn't really happen and they were like beating themselves up about it. And I think like just use if you don't reach those goals, I think that like don't let that define your outlook on anything and you can use that as kind of motivation to work a little harder for something else.
Yeah, and for me, I think like and I'm sure you are, and I think we all are. Like what I wanted in grade 11 was to be a paramedic. What? Like no, no, I could not see myself being a paramedic in this day and age. Like,
Yeah.
are you kidding me? I'm like terrified of like seeing any sort of like open wound or blood or anything. So like for me to like if you were to ask me in 5 years if what I wanted 5 years ago was the same, I don't know if it really would be. And I think that I'm still carving out that space. I'm still figuring it out. Did I ever think I would live in a mobile home? Definitely not. I remember saying that at 23, when I was 23, I wanted to be married with kids. No, like that's so not realistic. So I'm like a really big believer in like these are some sort of long terms I'd like to do. I created a bucket list when I was 14. I'm still checking things off of it, which is great. But like I don't know, I'm a pretty laid back person and I just don't know if it's healthy to necessarily set something that like might not come soon and then you might beat yourself up over it. So I don't know. I like having goals, but I don't like necessarily like having those as something that necessarily I need to then like feel maybe a little bit of like I'm not even shame, but just like it's more so like self-rooted, right? No one else is gonna be like, you didn't get that fried chicken campaign you said you wanted. Whereas for me, when I get it, I'm like, yeah, I vocalized that one.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like if it's something that's like it's taken you a couple tries and trial and error to actually get, it's so much more satisfying when you do finally get it because you're like, man, I worked to secure this deal and then wasn't sure if it was going to happen and then it happened and it's just like that much more fulfilling. I feel like.
I can tell you like a goal that I have in mind, which is kind of like vanity, is like I really want to have 10K followers so I can get the swipe up, which like I'll be honest is kind of selfish because I want to monetize that. That's something that I can then be like, okay, well, I can give you a swipe up. But I honestly think the user experience of if I am sharing something, people will be like, oh, do you have the link for that? So if I can add a swipe up, that's great. But those are things that it's like, okay, that's probably going to come whether it's in who knows? It could be a month. I could go viral tonight, or it could be like 50 years. So, like, yeah, it's a cool goal to have, but I'm not going to beat myself up over it.
Yeah, I mean, the swipe up feature is definitely, we use it all the time and it's convenient. So I totally get that why you'd want that. So,
Yeah, so there's like a small little thing that I'd love for sure.
definitely. One of the other questions we kind of ask everyone is if you could go back and talk to your 15-year-old self, what would you say?
So this might be like deep, but I think that like I always knew that I was gay, but I never vocalized it because everybody around me kind of knew, but I never really like came out and like shared that or like actively like like rally behind the community. It was kind of like, yeah, he probably is. And like, and it was just like, I never really had to. Like, I did dance, I did drama. All of my best friends since I was in grade 1 were girls. Like, no one really bullied me, which was like amazing. I never got bullied. Like, thanks so much for that. But I never did anything actively to like make that awareness or be like, I can like look like this or present myself like this, and maybe I don't conform into that. And then after high school, it was like, holy crap, there's so many people that were like closeted that like, I wouldn't say I was closeted, but I wasn't like waving the pride flag around and like supporting other people so that they could feel that. So I think like, luckily, I think people nowadays are a little bit more open to it, especially that those Gen Zers, they're definitely making some strides in the right direction. But for me, I just think there was a lost opportunity because there were people that watched me. I was very involved with all areas of like leadership, and like I knew the nerds, I knew like different communities, and I was always sort of like one foot in with everybody, but I never was really like promoting that. So I think for me, it would have been like to harness that, because that's something that's unique. And I think I could have given a lot more value to people that now I'm like, yeah, I could have been sort of like a figure to you, even if it's like a kid that was the grade younger than me, or the grade 9 when I was in grade 12. So I really wish that I maybe like rallied a little bit more behind that, got more involved with it.
Yeah, or like helping people feel more comfortable if maybe they're not in the same situation where they might um, have a little more difficulty. Like I have a couple friends who went through that and didn't, like when they came out in high school, they didn't have a pleasant experience with it. And I know that's still, even now, I mean, that was also like 10 years ago too. So I don't know what it would be like right now. But I remember watching like close friends of mine really struggle with that. And in a lot of their particular environments, there wasn't really anybody there that they could that could kind of help them, or they could that had that shared experience. So I get what you
Yeah.
mean.
We had like I guess it's like they call it, and I feel like this term is so outdated, but it was like the gay straight alliance, but it was like all straight people or people that were presenting straight at that time in their life. So it was so interesting and such a lost opportunity. And I feel like that advice would be, and the reason why that's coming up is because like at the end of the day, I think like authentically being yourself attracts like the best clients. Like I don't want to like have to like suppress who I am or feel like I need to wear a blazer. Like people already know that this is what they're getting, and that's why they choose to work with me and hire me. And that's exactly what I strive to do. Whereas there was maybe pieces where I could have been a little bit more transparent with who I am that could have helped other people out, because I have always been an extrovert and I've always been kind of like, I don't want to say a social light, but like a little bit more social. So yeah, I think for me, I had a missed opportunity that if I would have been a little bit more, maybe even like confident in my skin with it, that I probably could have like touched on people earlier than maybe waiting to now to bring that through and to kind of communicate that and to use my brand to like kind of elevate diversity and inclusion more than just sexual orientation is something I'm really passionate about. So
Yeah, and like I mean, it's still valuable to like to focus on now too, because even if you're like I mean, we always kind of wish we could have done more, but it's never kind of too late to do more now.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's always that opportunity there, and that's really interesting. So yeah, I mean, that's actually, I really appreciate that you shared that, because a lot of the time, like that's a unique kind of perspective that for like our show specifically, because normally when we ask that, people are like, oh, well, I wish I told myself to have more confidence or this and that. So like, I really appreciate that um, that's a more diverse perspective to that answer. So
Yeah, I think, and like people probably might not have even have known that like I had this perspective, right? Like there was probably like people that were like, is he gay? Like they didn't really like do that. And it still happens. Like my partner is in university right now, and someone said like, well, there's no one here that's gay. And he's like, which is like, as a society, we're pushing towards that a little bit more, but it does take not only the personality, like, and I wouldn't even say like the courage, but sometimes people, and this is like something that maybe you will include or not, is the whole like pronoun thing. I love that we do that, but as somebody that may have been a little bit worried to like wear that on my sleeve, is that especially in like academia and in corporate, by putting your pronoun, what if I'm not, but what if I was wanting to identify as something other than what I'm confidently doing right now? And I almost felt the pressure to put that pronoun in my email signature, but I wasn't quite ready for that. So I think there's like a lot of like, and that whole subject is super like all over the place, but like that's a great example of like, yes, we are going in the right direction, but what if someone's not quite ready to put in their email signature that they are maybe not what they would identify as or what other people assume they are? So there's so many moving parts there, and I love that. And I think the only thing we can do is have like open discussions on it and respect one another. But you do need to talk about it, or else there's never going to be any change.
Yeah. I that is a really interesting point because I never really thought about that before. And like, because I've always been like, when I see people and they're including their pronouns in things, and I'm like, oh, that's really nice or whatever. But like, you don't actually think about like, it's kind of forcing people to out themselves before they're ready. I never even thought about that. So
most people don't.
Yeah.
like being like with my partner being like the whole like academia, university research papers, like that's something that the universities, I think the universities really try to encourage people to like include that and include it. And I know a lot of like corporate companies, when they set you up with their work email, that's something they want to do. But I'm like, hey, does anyone realize that like you could actually be doing that? And it's not intentional. I would definitely say it's likely not intentional, but it's a different perspective that some people could maybe consider. It's almost like on a document where they say like your gender, but they like just leave it open and let them self-identify, but we won't go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. I know that's a whole other conversation that we don't have time for, but I didn't think about that, but I will now. And like, I mean, I don't know what a solution for that would be, but definitely something to think about.
For sure.
So I just have like two more questions. The one is another thing that we kind of ask everybody on our show, and that is, what is your favorite social media platform?
So I would definitely say that for me, my social media platforms give me different things, right? So ultimately, end of the day, my biggest community is on Instagram. So I love Instagram and I love that as my primary platform. To expand on that, Pinterest gives me the best web traffic. So I love Pinterest for that reason, but I monetize more on Instagram. But this app, Clubhouse, that I told you about is my current favorite just because it's so fresh, because I'm on there, because I've cultivated this community. I have regular programming. I'm seeing clients come through it. So as of this moment, Clubhouse, in general, Instagram, but I love every social platform, whether I'm just using it as a consumer or I'm actually creating content there. I.e., like I don't make TikToks, but I think TikTok is hilarious and I like to consume that content.
I love TikTok. TikTok is something that I started and I was like, I'm too old for this. Like, I'm turning 30. Like, why am I? But then I started actually using TikTok and I was like, this is addicting. This is so much fun. Like, I don't make TikToks, but like, I love watching them.
Consume it.
Yeah.
And the thing there is that you touched on, and I talk about this a lot, is like social media is always adapted typically by like younger generations, right? And then the older generation follows, and then the brand follows. So it's the same thing with like Snapchat, Facebook with more university, but now a lot of parents are on Facebook where the younger generation's not really going there. So like it always happens in that sort of order. But like even for me, I was on TikTok when it was on Musical.ly, and if anyone wants a little giggle, I would post topless selfies of me lip singing because that's what everyone did, and I got like close to 2,000 followers there. So now I've gone and I've hidden them all so no one can see them. But then TikTok bought Musical.ly, so now I'm on this massive platform. And again, just be aware of what you're posting on the internet.
Yeah, definitely. Like, just remember, like when you post something, it's there on the internet forever.
Like they're not bad. It's just I don't know if that's really in line with my brand right now.
Yeah.
And how I'm positioning myself is not like a teen that does dancing. Although I have some experience dancing. I probably could do some cool choreography. That's just not the type of content that we're sharing with our audience yet or ever. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it has to. There's nothing wrong with doing any of that. It's just like, if you want to build a brand that doesn't have that values, maybe don't.
Yeah, be aware of like a sustainable brand is a great answer there.
Yeah. Do you want to drop your Instagram handle now so that people can follow you?
Yeah, so it's Boy Who Blogs is my Instagram handle.
Perfect. We will link that for you as well in the description so then people can check out your page.
Oh, thank you.
So my last question is another one we kind of ask everyone, and that is if you have a favorite motivational quote that you would like to share.
A quote, I might say like, again, this might be a little deep, but what you think you become and what you feel you attract. And that's actually, I think, like a quote from Buddha. But ultimately, I think that kind of ties back into like motivation and mindset.
Yeah, just kind of putting out what you want to get back.
Yeah, and like honestly, like the world is your oyster, and I really do believe that. It's like there's no reason why you can't be the next prime minister or you can't be the next CEO of XYZ company. There's really no reason why you can't, and the only thing that's going to prevent you from doing that is honestly yourself. So a little deep, but it's serious.
No, it's relevant, and even just like thinking that, getting in that mindset makes a huge difference. So definitely super important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just before, do you have any other insights that you wanted to share before we wrap up? Or I know we kind of talked about a lot of stuff. So
Yeah, the only thing, and I think we touched on it, was just like always be kind. Like
Mhm.
at the end of the day, especially when I work with like content creators and they get a brand deal or a brand that reaches out to them and wants to give them free product, before they respond like, you don't know my worth, you don't know this. Remember, they might actually have no clue because they have never worked in that space. So always just treat people with like the utmost respect and be nice to one another because it is a very small world and people like to work with nice people. So that would be my final insight is like, don't be mean to people.
I think that's a wonderful place to leave off, um, because that's something we should all be doing no matter what we do or who we are, especially right now. So yeah, I appreciate that. And just want to say thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to talk to us today or talk to me today, because you've shared a lot of really, really insightful and important things. And I know that it's really going to hit home for a lot of people. So we really appreciate you talking to us today.
Yeah, and I appreciate you reaching out and for thinking for me to be a part of it. It's been really my first Zoom interview thing, so I'm really happy that you thought of me, and I'm excited to see the final edit.
Awesome. I'll probably send you a follow-up email shortly anyway. But again, thank you, and we'll keep in touch with you. And have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yeah, bye. Thank you.
Bye.